YouTube traffic, this is 345 Delta Foxtrot, ready to record another video. YouTube traffic. This is my standard disclaimer. If you haven't already seen it, please take a few seconds to check it out. Okay, today's topic is cutting aluminum, and some of the tools we're going to use for cutting aluminum leave a pretty rough edge. So the next video is going to be about cleaning up those edges and deburring them. First, a few words about safety. In general, the most important thing you can do is to wear safety glasses, and I highly recommend it. Us old people wear reading glasses, and that usually takes care of it. But if you don't normally wear glasses, get yourself a pair of safety glasses, even a cheap pair, $2. It's well worth it. Also, you may need some hearing protection. It's not too big a deal because you're going to notice that right away. If you need it, wear it. If you don't need it, don't wear it. Some of the tools, in particular things like a table saw, come with some safety features, and do not disconnect them. If your table saw comes with a riving knife, use it with a riving knife. If it comes with a blade cover, use it with a blade cover. Keep your hands well away from the blade. Use some sort of push stick. Another thing that it's not really listed here but is related is oftentimes what you're cutting can get pretty darn hot. So you may want to wear a pair of gloves just for the heat. Minimize the blade exposure. For something like a table saw, you want the full teeth to be exposed by about half an inch or so. For a bandsaw, you only need about an inch of the blade exposed. And then if you're messing around with setting up your tool or something like that, make sure that you disconnect the air, the power, the battery, whatever runs it. And try and keep your work area clean. You're going to be generating a lot of metal dust, metal shavings, and they don't get along with electric motors very well. So it's just a good idea to keep everything clean. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is a bandsaw, and this is the bandsaw that I have. It's probably one of the cheapest ones you can get. It's a Wen. It's 9 inches, which means that you can basically, that's the distance between the blade and the back post. You can cut a piece of metal that's 9 inches from where you want to cut it. So you could cut a circular or square piece of metal that's 18 inches on the side. This one, like I said, it's very inexpensive, so it doesn't have hardly any features. But one thing that I can definitely say for it is, it's not that much more expensive than a hacksaw. So personally, I think it's worth it. Probably a bigger consideration would be, do you have a place for it? And I can't help you out on that one. If you have a place for it, I'd recommend getting one. If you don't, well, you don't. I'd like to say a few words about setting up a bandsaw. There's many YouTube videos about how to do it. You can easily search for them, find one or two and watch them. But a very inexpensive bandsaw like this is not going to come highly calibrated at the factory. It's going to be put together quickly and inexpensively, and it may not be adjusted all that well. The first thing that I recommend you do, these are actually in reverse order here. I recommend that you move all the guide bearings back until they are definitely not touching the blade. The thing to do is to move them back pretty much as far as they'll go so that absolutely none of them are touching the blade, and then move them back in, and you'll be able to easily tell. You'll be able to see it start turning, and you'll be able to hear it. So move it back in as close to the blade as is practical, but definitely not touching the blade. And the other thing that you can do is a bandsaw has two large wheels that the blade runs around. And you can try and make sure that both wheels are in the same plane. And, an inexpensive bandsaw doesn't come with a lot of adjustments, but it does come with basically one in this case. So you can mess around with it a little bit and get it a little bit better than the way it came from the factory. That's not too big a deal. I would definitely recommend adjusting all the bearings. If you want to mess around with it a little bit more and try and optimize it, you can play around with the wheels a little bit, and you might be able to make things a little bit better. Okay, in general, it's not the tool that's really going to matter for cutting aluminum. Most any tool that will cut wood or steel or pretty much anything else for that matter will cut aluminum, with one caveat, and the caveat is you got to put the right blade in it. Do not use a wood blade to try and cut aluminum. It's way too coarse of a blade, and you'll make a mess. So the blade that I use is this one in red, and okay, there it is on Amazon's website. It's a Bosch blade. It's 18 teeth per inch. It's a 59.5 inch blade, which is what my bandsaw takes. It's 3/8 of an inch wide, and for my bandsaw, that's I think as wide of a blade as it'll take. If you're just shopping around for a bandsaw, I recommend that you look for one that would take a 1/2 inch blade at least. And make sure that you get a blade suitable for cutting metal. There's another one listed here, which is has a few more teeth per inch. As we're going to see, a bandsaw gives you a pretty rough cut, so you probably want to try and get as many teeth per inch as you can get in order to get the smoothest possible cut. Let's take a look at the cut and see what it's like. Okay, there it is. First I should tell you what I cut. All these test samples, they're 6063 aluminum with a T5 heat treatment. And They're 1.5 inches wide and 1/16 of an inch thick, which is 66 thousandths. And it's just a bar of aluminum I got at Lowe's. The reason I didn't use Van's aluminum is it's too thin. It's only 16 thousandths thick, and you couldn't get a very good picture of the edge. So I used something a little bit thicker just for the pictures. And this is the results after I cut it with the bandsaw. As you can see, it gives you a very rough cut with a very large burr on both sides. Now, those are the disadvantages of cutting with a bandsaw. The advantages are you can just cut a freehand shape. You could cut a curve or whatever you want to do. And so it doesn't do what I would call an excellent job at just cutting a straight line. What I recommend that you do is that you cut about a 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch too big, and then you smooth down the cut with something like a bandsaw or something like a bandsaw, a belt sander, or some sort of grinding wheel to smooth up the cut. And so use like a belt sander to remove that last 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch and come up right to the line of where you wanted to cut your piece of metal. And another advantage of a bandsaw is it has a fairly small kerf. So if Vans is asking you to cut, some tabs to free up a piece of metal, you can easily get in to make the cut. Okay, another type of saw that you can use is either a table saw or a miter saw. And this is the miter saw that I have, and this is the miter saw that I used to cut the piece of test metal coming up here. I also have a Dewalt table saw. Let's see. So this particular table saw is no longer available. I assume they came out with a newer model, but I'm sure that Dewalt has something that is almost exactly like this one. And I have nothing particularly in favor of Dewalt. Get whatever brand you want. Also, I don't recommend that you really go out and buy either a miter saw or a table saw for building an airplane. If you want a miter saw or a table saw just as a general tool to have in the garage, go for it. Go buy whatever you want. But it is not the kind of tool that you really are going to be needing and using regularly to build an airplane. And saws like this can be very dangerous. There's a lot of accidents every year, in particular with table saws. And Congress is talking about implementing some new legislation requiring more safety features for table saws. And it's a mixed thing. I mean, it'd be nice to have the safety features, but the disadvantages, the safety features they're talking about could add a lot to the cost of a table saw. I'm sure you can find some YouTube videos where very opinionated people talk about that topic. Do not remove any of the safety features. I already talked about this a little bit. This table saw right here comes with a riving knife, and it also comes with a blade cover. And don't take them off unless you absolutely have to. Also, I don't think it's listed here, but make sure you use a push stick. Keep your hands away from the blade. And another thing that you want to be careful about with any saw, but in particular this type of saw, is if you're trying to cut something really thin, it can be a problem. It's like trying to cut aluminum foil. It's just going to take it and grab it and wad it up and throw it out and make a mess. It's probably going to destroy whatever you're trying to cut. And it may also be a safety hazard. So even though it will cut the metal, you could take it and sandwich it between two thin pieces of plywood or something, and it'll cut it just fine. Because it's so thin, it just doesn't work very well. So if you're not sure, I highly recommend you start with a piece of scrap. And make sure that you know how it's going to cut and what it's going to do before you do anything real. In terms of setup, there's not all that much setup involved. Just make sure that your blade is nice and perpendicular to the stage. That applies to both saws. Both a miter saw and a table saw, the blade will tilt. So make sure you have it set to 0 degrees and that you actually check it and make sure that it is nice and perpendicular to the stage. Now, as I mentioned, it's all in the blade. So let's see. Okay, the blade that I use, that I have, and that I use to cut this test sample is made by a company called Concord. It's a carbide teeth, 10 inches in diameter, and has 80 teeth. I got it off of Amazon, and Amazon doesn't sell it anymore. It's not even listed on their website. So this is the equivalent Diablo blade. It's a little more expensive than the Concord blade, but I'm sure it will do an excellent job. It's also 80 teeth, 10-inch blade, and make sure that the blade you get has carbide teeth. And this is what the cut looks like. In this case, the bar of aluminum was sitting vertically in the miter saw. You get a nice smooth cut, very little burr, and you get nice 90-degree edges, which is really what you want out of a saw. But you may want to come back and round the edges when you do burr everything, when you smooth everything up. And if you turn the piece of metal that you're cutting 90 degrees so that it's sitting flat on the stage, this is what the cut looks like. It's very similar. You can just tell that the saw marks, the teeth marks are going in a little different direction now. And in this particular spot, you can see a little bit more of a burr than in the last sample, but it's not too bad. It's fairly small. Okay, you can use a jigsaw to cut aluminum or metal in general. This is the one that I have. I have nothing for or against Ryobi. This one is perfectly okay. It's variable speed, which I think is a good feature. This is another case where I would highly recommend that you just buy whatever you want as a general tool for the garage and not buy something. This is really not applicable very much for building an airplane. Generally, when you think of a jigsaw, you think of a corded or cordless one, but you can also get a pneumatic one. I have one of these as well, and I personally don't like it very well, and I basically never use it. But there's really not anything wrong with it. It's just a pneumatic version of a jigsaw. Okay. These are the blades that I used for cutting the test sample, and it's a set of blades. The one that I used in particular was a 32 teeth per inch metal cutting blade. These are Bauer blades sold by Harbor Freight, and they're pretty reasonably priced. If you want just to buy a single blade, you might want to take a look at something like this Bosch blade here. Not the 12 tooth per inch. What you probably want is this 36 tooth per inch blade. And it's not all that expensive. It's $7. And I'm sure it does a good job at cutting aluminum. Aluminum is pretty soft, not too hard to cut. Okay, that's what the cut looks like. It's a very rough cut. Pretty large burr, not quite as bad as the bandsaw, but pretty bad. It's pretty difficult to cut a nice straight line. Certainly, it's more difficult than the bandsaw. So you're going to want to do the same thing. Is you're going to want to cut your piece too large and then smooth it out with like a belt sander or some other tool, and use the belt sander to bring it down to the exact size that you wanted, right down to the line. In general, I would say that it's probably not the right tool for building an airplane. However, it is a very common tool that a lot of people have in their garage. It's a generally useful tool, and you can use it to cut aluminum. One big advantage that it has is that you only need access from one side. So if you have a great big panel and you've got to cut a hole in it, an access hole or something like that, that would be one way to do it. Let's see, another pretty common tool that a lot of people have is a Dremel. And this is the one that I have. It's a variable speed one, which is a nice feature. I recommend you get a variable speed tool. Dremel is a brand name. A lot lot of people just call them a Dremel, but the more generic name is a rotary tool. And there's certainly less expensive rotary tools out there. And I don't know how much difference the tool actually makes. As I said before, it's really in the blade. You want to spend more time selecting your blade than you do selecting your tool. Now these are the blades that I used for cutting the test sample. I used the large one here. This is a small set of blades sold by Harbor Freight. You can get the same set on Amazon, or not exactly the same, but a pretty similar set of blades. Let's see, looks like you get a couple, like an additional mandrel or two, and for about the same price if you buy it on Amazon. But if you buy it at Harbor Freight, you can get it for 20 or 30% off, so take your pick. So let's take a look at the quality of the cut that you get. You get a pretty good cut. Fairly clean cut, not great, but fairly good, and fairly small burr, not too much. One of the disadvantages of something like a Dremel is basically you have to make a freehand cut, and so it's hard to cut a nice straight line. It's not real hard, but it's like the bandsaw and the jigsaw. You're going to want to cut too large and then smooth it down with a belt sander or a file or some other tool to the exact size that you want. And I think this is the last tool on my list. Sorry, let's see, wrong. Whoops. Okay, I finally got it. These are Aviation Snips. The ones I got were from Home Depot, nothing fancy. Harbor Freight also sells them. Probably many different people sell them. They're a pretty useful tool to have around in general. They're not that expensive. So it's a tool that I would recommend that you buy just for general use. They're also, this version that I have, the yellow ones, are called the straight version. They also come in left and right. So the straight ones work fine for small cuts. If you're going to be cutting a larger piece of metal, the problem is you need one side to kind of curl up so that you can keep advancing the tool. And so that's why they make a left and a right cut version. And if you're going to be making, you know, several cuts, it might be worthwhile buying all three versions. But I use them so infrequently that just the straight version seems fine. One thing these are useful for is you're going to get multiple crates from Van's aircraft. They're going to have steel bands around them, holding them closed. So you can just take a tool like this to snip those steel bands and open up the crates. So, like I said, it's kind of a generally useful type tool, especially for the price. Okay, this is the cut that you get from the snips. The cut is fairly smooth and very little burr, except for the fact that the blades are serrated. So you get this very large serrated burr. Oops. And you're going to have to do something to clean that up. A bandsaw or I'm sorry, a belt sander or something like that to clean your cut up. I already mentioned this. When you're cutting with snips, the metal tends to bend, to curl up, and that can be undesirable. You can probably flatten it back out, whatever you're trying to cut, but it is kind of a pain. Okay, here we have all the cuts on the same slide so you can compare them. Let me move my picture. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Okay, there's the bandsaw on the far left, and as you can see, it's a very rough cut, very large burr. Next one is the miter saw. Much smoother cut, and a little burr, not too much. If you put it horizontally, comes out a little better. Get a little smoother cut, much less burr, pretty smooth cut. Works pretty well. Now, on a miter saw, there's a limit to how big a piece of metal that you can cut. It's not really made for, large sheets of metal. You're going to have to use a table saw for that. But if you have, in particular, fairly small piece of metal and it's fairly thick, miter saw is a pretty good way to cut it. And you can go to a table saw or something if you have a much larger piece of metal. Okay, next one is the jigsaw. Very rough cut, not too much of a burr, but a very rough cut, hard to get a straight line. Definitely going to need cleaning up. Next one is the Dremel. Fairly clean cut, not too bad. A little bit of burr, but not much. And if you have a very steady hand and you can cut a straight line, or if you can come up with a way to mount your Dremel somehow to make straight cuts, it'd be a pretty good tool. And then the last picture on the far right is the Aviation Snips with the very large burr due to the serrated blades. There are some other somewhat less common ways to cut metal, cut aluminum in particular. The first one is actually pretty common. It's the hacksaw. Most people have a hacksaw. They're very inexpensive. Just put a blade in it suitable for cutting metal. And If you don't have a hacksaw, you might want to take the $10 or $15 that you're going to spend on a hacksaw and just put it into buying yourself a bandsaw. In particular, if you think you're going to be using it a fair amount, a bandsaw is a lot easier to use and generally a better tool than a hacksaw. And also, there's metal shears. Okay, this is a metal shear sold by Harbor Freight. It's the Bauer brand. And let me change picture there. Okay, there's a picture of how it actually works. What it does is it actually cuts a thin strip out of the metal. If you're not doing it that way, then just like with the snips, one side of the metal is going to tend to curl up and make a mess. So the way they get around this is instead of making one cut, they make two cuts. You have this strip in the middle that curls around. So the disadvantage is it has a very large kerf. But the advantage is you can get a fairly clean cut, and I don't have a pair, so I can't say too much about them. But it's something that you definitely want to keep in mind in case you ever need something like that. And they come, let's see, this version shown here is corded. But there is also a pneumatic version if you prefer a pneumatic tool. It works the same way. I don't know. Yeah, similar picture there. You can see the strip of metal curling up. And also there's things called nibblers. Okay, this is a nibbler sold by Harbor Freight. This is a cordless one. It's the Hercules brand. And it just like punches little tabs of metal out one after another as you move it along, as you would expect from the name nibbler. I think one advantage of this type of tool is if you only have access to one side, it's a way to get in and make a cut. I don't have one, and so I can't really say too much about it, about the quality of the cut that you're going to get or how straight of a cut that you can make. But it is something to keep in mind as a possibility. There's also things like angle grinders, which I don't really think is the right tool for the job. But if you want to do more of a grinding as opposed to a cutting type action, you could probably make an angle grinder work on aluminum just fine. It's probably going to give you a very large kerf and not a very smooth edge. And I would highly recommend that you practice on scrap first. But it is a possibility for cutting metal. There's tools similar to angle grinders called cutoff tools. Or you can put like a cutoff wheel in an angle grinder for cutting. But in general, it's probably not the right tool for building an airplane. And the last thing on the list is just the microscope that I used for taking the pictures. You certainly don't need something like that, but if you want to take high magnification pictures to see how you're doing, if you want to do similar experiments in terms of cutting or deburring or whatever, it's not a very expensive tool. This one is only $36, and it seems to work okay. It's not great. It's not a professional quality tool, but you can get pretty good pictures with it, as you can see. Okay, that's pretty much it for this video. As always, if you want to recommend these videos to other people, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and leave a comment. It turns out I have 4 subscribers now, and so thank you for subscribing. So one of the things that it does is encourages me to keep making videos. Know that there's at least a few people out there that are watching them. And as always, I'll put links to everything I talked about in the description, where you can go back and pause the video at the right place and just write it down off the screen. And as I already mentioned, the next video is going to be about deburring and cleaning up all the edges that we just saw. In particular, you know, like the bandsaw, which has just a horrible burr. So hopefully that video will be out in just a day or two. So I highly encourage you to watch that video as well. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.